And the Ravens take possession at their 43 with 4:26 left to play. Quick toss, Henry running to the left side, gets a block. He's at midfield, he's rolling, 40, 30, leg race, 20. The King is on his feet, 10, and he's taken down at the 6-yard line. Derrick Henry has put the Ravens in position to wrap it up. Oh, what a play.
And wrap it up they did. Ravens get the win in Cincinnati, 41-38 in overtime. Welcome to NFL Daily, starting off strong with one of the best games of the year. I'm Greg.
Lamar that actually had the fumble that was tough for him to celebrate after the game because they're on a drive with an opportunity to win. He's clapping as the clock winds down. The ball bounces off of his hands. He forces a fumble. Cincinnati recovers it again. But there's just some chicanery with the clock management and the play management. Zach Taylor elects to run the ball 3 consecutive times. Evan McPherson comes out. There's a bad hold on the kick, and the Ravens get another chance, which is something that I did not think they would do. The drive summary late in this game.
Yes.
Second half drive summary for both teams. Touchdown, 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 interception, touchdown. That's how it was. That was the kind of game. And I did not think Baltimore would get a stop, but that interception is Marlon Humphrey, who was in the wrong place at the wrong time for most of this entire game, finally taking a guess on a shot and picking off Joe Burrow, ultimately giving him a chance to win this game.
It's why I wanted to start with this game, not just because it puts, what is potentially a Super Bowl contender in Cincinnati at 1-4 and really put some wind in the sails of the Ravens, but that it exemplifies this week's games. I think this was the best week of football that we had. We're going to get to a lot of really fun, tight games throughout the day. And it kind of reminded me of the Thursday night game, too. Yes, it's offense, Patrick, but it ended in part because Joe Burrow throws a crucial interception that gives the Ravens an extra possession at the end of regulation. They also punt after getting the ball with 1:35 left, and you're thinking they're going to have a chance. There's the fumble. There's the missed field goal because of the bad snap. And so it was a little bit of everything. It was redemption for Justin Tucker. And Nick Shook, I know they stopped him for a chunk of this game, but man, this Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson offense is just a lot to deal with.
Yeah, it's a lot to deal with. That's why I picked the Ravens in a high-scoring affair. I just didn't think it would be 41-38 high-scoring. I mean, that is extreme, but I guess this is the new age, or at least when you face the Bengals defense. It bums me out for Joe Burrow that he has to be nearly perfect every week to give his team a legitimate chance to win. And he throws one interception at the worst time possible, and it's a backbreaker, and it allows, the Ravens an opportunity to win the game because he's been so good, and yet the Bengals defense has not been anywhere near as good. And going up against a team like the Ravens, #1 rushing team in the league, Bengals have a soft front. You knew this was going to happen eventually. I'm surprised that they actually contained him as long as they did before they finally broke through. So the final score, while very high, not too much of a surprise in one of the most thrilling games of the year.
And ultimately, in that overtime possession where the Ravens fumbled the ball on the snap to Lamar where he's clapping, a couple of plays before that, Derrick Henry could have ended this game. There was a run to the right side where Henry almost broke free. Hubbard got his ankles. Kind of the story of the game, where the highlight that everybody will remember is Lamar stiff-arming Hubbard twice on a touchdown pass to Isaiah Likely. That's going to be one of those plays that we're going to see a billion times.
Oh, let's listen to it right now. I'm sure Sandusky's got a good call on this one. Let's go to it.
Lamar in the shotgun. Lamar bobbles the snap, has to pick it up off the turf. He's being chased, corralled, stiff arms a man, Sam Hubbard, and finally slings in the back of the end zone. Touchdown! Isaiah Likely. Oh my! Unbelievable! Lamar Jackson bobbled the snap, picked it up off the turf, stiff-armed Sam Hubbard, a la Derrick Henry, extended the play, threw back across his body, and hit the tight end. In other words, he did everything wrong for the perfect outcome.
which is the story of the Baltimore Ravens in this particular game, where this game has gotten away from them. It's tough to look at the stat line for Jamar Chase, who had 10 catches for 193 yards and 2 touchdowns. There was absolutely a problem on the other side of the ball. Ultimately, the bounces work out for Baltimore where they hadn't earlier in the season, and they get
right. I mean, Marcus Williams has been an issue for the Ravens in their secondary this year, just getting burned for big plays. He was flat-footed on at least one of those Jamar Chase touchdowns where he takes the short pass for 70 yards. T. Higgins, I think, has looked really good the last few weeks. He gets 2 touchdowns, 9 for 83. And yeah, it hurts that Burrow has such an electric game, but then he has that interception, and then he doesn't get a chance at the end. And this stuff is driving me crazy. And I know the kickers are better than they've ever been. We'll get to a few of them that were awesome this week.
Including Tucker's today.
Right.
A driven 59-yarder.
Yes, I shouldn't lose that fact that this was a great day for Justin Tucker to get his groove back with that big one to tie it late in regulation. Then, of course, he hits the short game winner, too, which is always a nice feeling. But they run it 3 straight times, and it has given me flashbacks to Marty Schottenheimer and Mike McCarthy and all the coaches that don't trust their quarterback for some reason in the biggest of spots. And yet you can say, well, it was more on the snap, but it's a long kick. And either way, just let them go try to win the game on offense. Like, there was no reason to really worry, but it was maybe in his head, that interception that they had. I'm just going to people are very angry in Cincinnati. Our friend, the Spice Rack, sent me his group Bengals text, and it's just got a lot of F-bombs. I can't even really read it, but they want everyone fired is basically the answer. That is effing embarrassing, effing losers, absolute effing losers, F this staff. And yeah, this is kind of where Bengals fans are right now.
I've never seen so many swear words in my life.
This is me actually editing it down.
I wish we could show this.
Maybe, if you watch on YouTube, maybe after the fact, or I'll put it out on social with some things blurted out. But prayers to Spice Rack. Maybe this is the game, though, that I thought that the Ravens deserve. I know Bengals fans won't want to hear this, but the Ravens should be 3-2. They're a good team. They're the first team, Nick, to rush for more than 1,000 yards in the first 5 games of the season since the 2006 Falcons with Michael Vick and Michael the Burner Turner, and only the second team since '84. So they seem perfectly built in 2024, where it's more about running than passing to win. And yet today, Lamar, throws for 348 and 4 touchdowns. He gets both his tight ends involved, or 3 tight ends involved. Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews goes 4 for 55, and Kohler goes wild. So they have to feel really good about their offense and getting a tough division win.
Yeah, I mean, entering the week, the Ravens were in first in rushing yards per game by a margin of more than 45 yards per game. Like, that's significant in the league. And it makes you realize that then they can go out and Lamar can throw for 348 and 4 touchdowns. And you're like, I don't know how to stop this team. This is what makes them so scary. In fact, folks probably look back at their 0-2 start and think, God, I wish the Cowboys would have buried them when they had an opportunity. Kind of like where the Bengals are at 1-4 right now. I wish somebody else would have, because this team's on a roll already.
Well, you know what happened? Now they're built to play from behind now, Greg.
Oh, yeah.
Where previously apparently they weren't built to play from behind, but now that's a little roster construction hack.
Maybe it is good for them actually, because they've given up all those 10-point leads. They're not built to play with the lead, and yeah, they're one of the few teams we were thinking we were a certain team, which we'll talk about soon. Patrick and I have put on Fraud Watch, and then I was thinking about it. I was like, well, other than like the Vikings and the Ravens, you could put the whole league on Fraud Watch right now, but the Ravens are feeling good at 3-2. And yeah, but before we go, let's listen to Lamar after the game, because it's always nice to hear a happy Lamar.
What are the emotions that you are feeling right now?
I'm kind of ticked off, that overtime fumble, that little mishap, trying to get the ball from our center. But our defense did a great job, stopping those guys. A great offense over there, a great team all around. And we got it done. The GOAT, shout out to the GOAT, man, JT and D-Hen.
Yeah, they got a lot of potential GOATs on the same roster there between Tucker and Henry and Lamar Jackson playing the quarterback position as well as anyone in the league. Let's go to Houston, where C.J. Stroud was doing the same for most of Sunday.
To give the Texans the victory. Here's the snap by Weeks. The spot. Here's the kick by Fairbairn. Has the distance, and it's good! Fairbairn wins it at the buzzer! The Texans beat the Bills! 59 yards for the dub on H-Town Day. 23-20.
Oh, yeah, it's H-Town Day. Isn't every day H-Town Day? Mark Vandermeer from KILT. Kaimi Fairbairn. Yeah, we got these kickers just hitting old 59-yarders like it's nothing. Another controversial end of the game play calling sequence. Zach Taylor taking a lot of heat in Cincinnati for what he did. I think Zach Taylor was a lot more at fault for what happened in the Bengals game than Sean McDermott and the Bills were for what happened at the end of regulation. You look at the drive chart and you see that Fairbairn kick came on a 2-play, 5-yard, 7-second drive. Wait, how did that happen? It happened because Josh Allen threw 3 straight incompletions after getting the ball inside of their own 10-yard line. It was actually the 3-yard line with 32 seconds to go. Now, a lot of things happened to set that up. It was a totally boneheaded situation there to recover the ball. You get it at the 3-yard line. It's 32 seconds left. But the Texans have 3 timeouts. And Sean McDermott explains after the game, we know Kaimi Fairbairn has that sort of leg. We know that they have all 3 timeouts. If he could do it again, he says he probably would have run the ball on first down. But I actually agree with him that they were in a very tough spot. They have to get the first down there, or else you're in the exact same situation. If you ran the ball 3 straight times, yes, in theory, you could have made them burn all 3 timeouts, but they also would have had more time in that case than the 7 seconds, and you could have very well ended up in the same situation. In the end, they have to get the first down. Now, I think you can fault Nick what Josh Allen decided to do, maybe some of the routes that they're throwing, that there weren't enough options or weren't enough decisions throwing the ball short. And he's throwing low percentage passes down the field. I got some stats on that are absolutely crazy. But to me, it was a little bit more about execution, that the Bills just couldn't complete a 10-yard pass because they were in a very tough spot there with the field position. I think most likely the Texans are probably going to get the ball in a decent position unless you pick up a first down. And they didn't pick up a first down. So I've killed Sean McDermott over the years for play calling and game management. I actually don't think this is as big of a deal as people are making it out to be.
Well, and let's not leave Joe Brady out of this too, because he obviously plays a big part in it as well. It kind of speaks to what happened to them against the Ravens early in that game last week, where they essentially struggle in, yard situations in which they need a first down. Like, I know it sounds simplistic to say that, but like early in that game, they could not get the 4th down, or they decided to punt after getting a 4th down early. They couldn't convert 3rd and 8 or even any longer, and they're backed up against their own goal line. It's a double-edged sword, though, because we just got on Zach Taylor for being conservative and running the ball 3 times before trying to set up a field goal. You could try to run the ball a couple times there, but you're backed up against your, the shadow of your own goalpost. What if you get stopped for a loss and suddenly you've given up a safety in a tie game? So it's a really tough situation to navigate. So it really does come down to execution. It also speaks to the Bills' inability to find consistent success in the passing game unless it's a little bit of Josh Allen heroics, which is a thing that we've seen over the last now 2 games. So they need to go back to the drawing board and I think examine what they do in these situations, whether it's early in the game or in a key situation like that late. And ultimately they end up with egg on their face. But at the same time, what are you going to do? Like, you're 5 yards away from your own end zone. You have to, kind of tread lightly there.
I think in Joe Brady and Sean McDermott's defense, you're not going to have a whole lot of Josh Allen games where he's 1 of 14 against pressure for 24 yards. Like, Josh Allen only completed 9 passes.
He's usually the best quarterback in the league against pressure.
And I think it's just an anomaly. I hope Josh is okay. But in those situations, 3 straight passes, you think Josh is going to roll out. He's going to do the pump fake thing. He's going to go off. He had a couple of good runs in this game. Just the universe somehow, in this conspiracy against the Bills, just in a game where the Texans made mistakes late as well. There was a game-winning drive opportunity where Dare Ogunbowale, instead of getting some extra yards for Fairbairn on the drive before, for some reason slides to burn clock, and he could have got at least 7 yards. Just an odd decision. I guess because Dare's hit game-winning field goals. He did it last year. Maybe he had confidence in his dude.
Right.
I
That's
don't
a good
know what's
pull.
going
That's
on.
a great pull.
Like, what? I'm not sure what happened there.
Well,
Also,
I think he was trying to keep the clock moving. I mean, it was very clear. He was trying to keep. He had the first down. I actually thought that was a good play by Ogunbowale. I hear what you're saying. Maybe he could have just tried to run someone over. He's a big dude. But at that point in the game, and I'm really glad you brought that up, it looks like Houston is going to be able to run the clock down potentially and kick their own version of a game-winning field goal. But C.J. Stroud has an intentional grounding, which I think was the right call, but that ends up backing them up before the punt. So there was like a lot going on here. But you mentioned 1 for 14 on pressure throws. Josh Allen went 9 for 30 in this game.
Yeah, it was nasty.
For 131 yards and a touchdown. That's the lowest completion percentage for a passer that threw at least 30 passes. I forget what the number was, but it was a really long time. Like, you don't see a 9 for 30. He went 1 for 15 on throws over 10 yards. And I went and looked. That throw over 10 yards was about 12 or 13 or something. So it was something like 0 for 12 on throws plus 15. All day, you just saw him throwing hope balls down the field, and they played a lot of single high. They were almost daring them to throw the ball deep. They don't have a lot of guys who can win one-on-one. The Texans trusted their secondary. Their secondary played great. They got a lot of pressure on Josh, even if it wasn't a lot of sacks, which is the story of the the Texans' defensive season. And I just think this is a game where, if you go back and watch it, both defenses were outstanding. C.J. Stroud got 425 yards of offense and I think did amazingly positive things, but he also turned the ball over twice in the second half and could not move the ball. And the Bills' defense stood up over and over and over and over again, giving their offense a chance to win in the second half. So you got to say their defense played outstanding too. And I'm just giving up to both these defenses that they were ahead of the offenses in this game. And that, yeah, the Bills have some things to figure out offensively in a game where they did run the ball really well against a good Texans run defense. They maybe should have stuck with it a little more because they were getting consistent chunks when they ran the ball.
Yeah, I have one note from the live watch before I go back and watch this again tomorrow about Josh Allen, and it just says stuck playing hero ball. And it really concerns me, not like seriously we're long-term concerned, but just in the last couple weeks, this looks a lot like he was stuck, in that situation he was stuck in the final weeks of Ken Dorsey. And that is not where the Bills offense needs to go. And you're right, they ran the ball well, but when the ball's in his hands, he doesn't need to be out there trying to play hero the whole time. I mean, that's how you end up 9 for 30. And yeah, you're right. Tip of the cap to the defenses and everything else. I'm sure they'll get it ironed out, but for one day visually, not great.
And looking over at, because you're trying to explain this 9 of 30 performance, Curtis Samuel had 5 yards average separation. Mac Hollins had 4.5. Dalton Kincaid north of 3.5. And so maybe it was just a bad Josh game.
Maybe it was the picture that the Texans were showing him were not clear, because whenever he threw it to Curtis Samuel, it was a disaster. Like, Curtis Samuel, who I've always defended, did not look great. They threw 7 targets to Samuel and Valdez-Scantling for a total of 0 yards. And so they're just not in sync. The offensive line, though, is playing really well. Like I said, they ran the ball for, I think, like 150 yards on the game, and they protected Allen well enough. They missed Khalil Shakir in this game, but Khalil Shakir should not mean that much to him. I give McDermott credit. He went for a 4th and 5 where the announcers are saying don't go for, or it was Charles Davis saying don't go for it. It was at midfield in a close game. I think a 10-point game, and they hit Keon Coleman for what turns out to be a 49-yard catch and run touchdown. So that's an ultimate great job. Nico Collins, I should mention, left this game with a hamstring injury that was caused on a 67-yard touchdown where he absolutely dusted the Bills secondary. The rookie Cole Bishop made a mistake there, ate the cheese. And that left Stephon Diggs kind of as their number 1 receiver, mostly playing out of the slot. And Diggs came through with enough possession, chain-moving catches, 6 for 82. I noticed if you can have an icy hug, I would say Diggs and Allen had an icy hug. It was the quickest hug you can possibly imagine, and a little bit of side eye from Diggs afterwards. Here is Diggs in the locker room after the game.
Hey, y'all know how much that meant to me. I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. But the biggest thing, we got to get back to work, man. That was a hell of a win, but we got to get back to the grind on the next week, man. Love y'all boys, man. Texas on 3, 1, 2, 3. Texas.
I like that.
Yeah, look at just Stephon breaking it down in the locker room. Maybe the quick hug is because, like, he knows Josh played a bad game. He's not trying to sit there and draw even more attention.
Okay.
Who knows?
Fair, but then I also watched all the other hugs and interactions Stephon Diggs was having, like, immediately before and after. They were longer. Eric has his hand raised for the first time.
So real quick, it's just something I noticed. Texans played Minnesota last week, and they did so much B-roll about Diggs hugging it out with everybody. He hasn't been there in 5-6 years. There was hugs with people I'm sure he'd even play with. He was in Buffalo last year. I didn't see one Josh Dapp up. I didn't see any love on the sidelines. It was weird.
I saw some other love that he was getting from his old teammates, but not with Josh. We've heard some things. And, I don't think it is like a secret that they weren't necessarily on.
But it is
on
a
the best
secret.
team.
It is a secret.
Okay.
Right? It's literally a secret. Nobody knows.
There was a crazy love fest video on Minnesota Twitter after the game. I'm I don't even think Diggs was there with that guy, and he's hugging this guy like it's his uncle.
Well,
Stephon was there last year in Buffalo. What are we doing?
Texans get the last laugh, 4-1. That could be a big game when we're looking at seeding at the end of the year. The Texans have survived a couple tricky weeks here, and now they are well in front in the AFC South. The Bills fall to 3-2. Let's go to Santa Clara, where I didn't expect one of the games of the day, but we got one of the games of the day.
First down, snap to Purdy. Straight drop, back in trouble, hit, and the ball flutters far side, and Kaiser White with a diving interception to win the game at midfield. Purdy got hit, the ball fluttered, and Kaiser White caught up to it, pulled it in, and the Cardinals are going to get one in San Fran.
Unbelievable, David. The ball batted into the air. Crazy Carl showed up for the Arizona Cardinals. Bat the pig into the air, and Kaiser White comes down with it.
Bat the pig! Into the air! Let's go! One of the most underrated players in the league, Kaiser White.
I can't do that for long. I can't do that at all. 24-23. The Cardinals get a stunning victory against the 49ers on the road. Not just stunning because of the recent history between these two teams and where the Cardinals have been at the last few weeks, but stunning because it was a 23-10 lead at halftime, and the 49ers don't get another point. Stunning because the Cardinals go for 2 when they're down 4. Spicy ends up winning on a Chad Ryland 35-yard field goal before that interception by my man Kaiser White. Shook, tell me, because you watched this game closer, what do you think was the key to the Cardinals winning the second half 14-0?
Running game, number one. Everybody knows who's watched the Cardinals this year that if the running game's going, they have a chance offensively. And James Conner, who got to halftime with 9 yards on 6 attempts, ended up with 86 yards on 19 attempts. He didn't score, but he paced this offense and balanced it out, which first off, it kept them on schedule because the Cardinals in 3rd and long are terrible. And it kept them on schedule, which allowed Kyler Murray to just take the short passes, kind of dot the field with completions and keep the offense moving. So that was the first part, balancing out the offense. The second part was takeaways. They were backed up 1st and goal. 49ers with the ball, 1st and goal, moving right down the field, about to put the game away. Jordan Mason around the left end, and a linebacker you've never heard of because he hadn't played a down before today comes in and knocks the ball out, and it's recovered by the Cardinals, which then gives them the opportunity to go down the field and take the lead with that.
Does he have a name?
Chad Riley. Oh, yeah. Well, it's going to take me a second to find
Lucetta. I don't know his first
Jesse
name.
Jesse Lucetta was his name, and he made a phenomenal play. Dennis Gardeck makes a key pass breakup on 3rd and 23 because the Niners lose Jake Moody to injury. They're not going to kick a however long field goal, very long, out of Mitch Wishnowski's range. So they have to go for it on 4th and 23. It's all the key little plays in between that stacked up, and they capitalized on every single one of them, avoided catastrophe, and came away with a shocking win that nobody saw coming.
A defense that really bothered Brock Purdy, who only had 1 completion under pressure on the day.
Wow.
Most of his when Brock Purdy, we see it all the time, spins away, rolls out to his right, makes a play when he's got time. Over 2.5 seconds, Brock Purdy was 10 of 24 in this game with 2 interceptions. Just making some weird decisions. Not sure what Jonathan Gannon's defense did, but it was really a problem for this 49ers offense to make big plays. Jordan Mason was really the only play that the 49ers could make other than a couple of Ayuk plays.
Okay, so one of the theories that I've long believed, there are some of these coordinators that dial up these crazy game plans, and sometimes they really hit, and sometimes they really don't. And you know what I mean? Like that if you're a game plan defense, you can have a game like where you win 41-10, and I think this is almost a game plan offense too, where they're very creative, like they did against the Rams. Or you could have a game like last week where they lose 42-14, like it's not working. Or you really muddy up the picture, and without like the best talent, Nick, you end up, winning and making enough big plays to keep this 49ers offense down. On the other side, I didn't see a ton of this game, but Kyler Murray has a 4th and 5. The game's on the line. They are driving for what turned out to be the go-ahead game-winning field goal, but they almost certainly lose that game if he doesn't get it. And he has the most Kyler Murray fadeaway jumper to Marvin Harrison on 4th and 5. Not many guys can do that, and that's just your best players making a great play.
Yeah, and it was a quiet day for Marvin Harrison Jr. Before that fact, they highlighted had been targeted 6 times and had 1 catch. That ended up being probably the biggest catch of the day, as he just throws basically a jump ball on and out. He knows he's going to be there. He just throws it off his back foot with the rush all in his face. And, of course, Marvin Harrison Jr. comes down with the ball, buys him a fresh set of downs, and then they're suddenly in a position where they can run the ball and start to drain clock because they know they're in field goal range. And, again, tip of the cap, new arrival, Chad Ryland shows up to replace Matt Prater, who's injured. Ice in his veins all day, knocks in both of his field goal attempts. Beautiful, beautiful comeback win for them.
I mean, Chad Ryland had one of the worst seasons any kicker's ever had last year for the Patriots. Yeah. It's on Belichick's 2023 epitaph there that he used the 4th round pick, but he's back in the league and I'm happy for him. I guess I'm not that happy for him. You're laughing at me.
Greg was like, "Oh, who's their kicker?" I'm like, "Oh, they got Chad Ryland." It's like, that's over.
There's no way they're gonna do it. I want to go back to the Cardinals going for 2, down 4.
Yeah.
Like if they hadn't made that's one where people are going to get at them. They won this game partly with an edge in the numbers. I mean, that is a gutsy call. Kyle Shanahan went for a field goal on 4th and goal from the 2-yard line. So those are like analytics plays, and Kyle Shanahan is not playing by the numbers, and the Cardinals in those cases decided to, and it really paid off for them. The 49ers are now 0-2 in the NFC West. Both of those games, they had 10-point leads in the second half against the Rams and the Cardinals. They're 0-3 in the NFC. Sets up a very compelling Thursday night game, which these two guys, Nick Shook and Patrick Claybon, are taking care of for me while I'm in, hopefully asleep in the middle of the night in London. That's a big game. I mean, the 49ers got a kick return touchdown, a block field goal return touchdown, and an interception on a screen pass that set them up on a short field, and they lost this game. And so, fair's fair. Like, they had some big things going their advantage, and they did not win.
Yeah, it was one of those games where it just felt like everything was going their way, and they were going to cruise to victory, and it was almost a formality until the second half arrived, and they started to kind of get stymied by the Cardinals defense, and then they started making plays, and the balance just kind of shifted back in their favor, and you knew you were like 1 or 2 explosive plays away from suddenly this changing, and that never really quite happened. It was just a steady approach, and because they had enough time, that's why they ended up pulling it out. But I mean, it's one of those games they're gonna look back at and think, how did we lose this game? Because we made all the right plays in the first half, and they went to sleep. I mean, Brandon Ayuk, 147 yards on 8 catches, his first breakout. His highest before was under 50 yards. Like, that should be leading toward a victory, and they just didn't get the job.
Right, they're just weird. I mean, Jordan Mason has more yards rushing in the first 5 games than any running back in the history of the 49ers, but that fumble just absolutely turned the game. And yeah, Ayuk gets going, but then Juwan Jennings has 13 yards on 4 targets, and Deebo Samuel has 11 yards on the game, and so they're having a hard time putting it all together. That can happen for teams, that lose the Super Bowl, and it's a long offseason and a whole lot of injuries. We're going to go take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to travel across the ocean.
Oh.
It was a fun game in Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It was a long game. We'll talk a little Vikings-Jets.
The Jets, 5 of 16 on 3rd down. Rodgers back to pass, fade right, and intercepted. Did Gilmore pick it off? Come on, the Vikings. Yes! Vikings ball. I believe it was Stephon Gilmore, but he's being mugged by his teammates, and why wouldn't he? The Minnesota Vikings are going to improve to 5-0. Stephon Gilmore.
Ooh, the Vikings, 5-0. What a world. KFAN, Paul Allen, always getting it done, just like Stephon Gilmore, always getting it done, reading the throw, trying to go back shoulder to Mike Williams. Gilmore saw it. Mike Williams did not. It is time for the Sunday Drive presented by the all-new hybrid Toyota Camry. And yes, it was our NFL Network game. It was a big game, I think, in the Jets season. And more than anything, I think it was an awesome game by the Vikings defense. It's tricky, like whether you want to give credit, to bad offense or good defense. In this case, Patrick, we've seen this Vikings defense scramble so many different teams that if not for a very poor Sam Darnold game and a bad interception in the fourth quarter, this thing would have been over and quite boring with the way that the Vikings defense played through about the first 10, 11 possessions that the Jets had.
And they did it with consistency. It wasn't just big plays, because I know Aaron Rodgers had 3 bad passes that he'll tell you were bad passes, including the one that Stephon Gilmore got, but they were consistent as the day went on, especially getting pressure on Aaron Rodgers, who ultimately ended up throwing the ball 54 times.
Wow.
And this one including 22 targets to Garrett Wilson. But on the other side, while the Jets got called for a litany of penalties, it was really just a consistent veteran performance, something that we've seen from this Vikings defense for the entire season, bothering Aaron Rodgers, limiting Breece Hall on the ground to 9 carries for 23 yards. Braylon Allen didn't fare much better. They both averaged 2.6 yards per carry. Smothering, they're in the right spots. It's just a very, very good, solid defense.
It's very well coached. Shook, before that Darnold interception, which really changed the game with under 10 minutes to go, they're in their own end. It's just been a punt fest in the second half. Darnold struggled since Aaron Jones went out, which was early in the second quarter with a hip injury. He gives the Jets a chance on a short field, and they cash in for their second short field touchdown of the game. Before that, the Jets offense had 6 punts, 2 turnovers, those interceptions by Rodgers, 1 turnover on downs. And yeah, they got 3 after a special teams penalty gave them an extra possession on a roughing the punter. Like, the Jets got 3 points that way, and they got another 7 on a short field. So the offense almost hadn't done anything themselves. They had like very few total yards. And yet there they were at the end of the game driving, and I'm thinking, like, man, is Aaron Rodgers going to do this? And right now, I don't think there's just like a lot of belief and a lot of like cohesion in that offense.
Yeah, last week I got on them for making Aaron Rodgers throw it 42 times in the rain. 54 times seems like a lot, and it is, but there was a period during that stretch where they tried to run the ball twice and got stuffed like 3, 4, 5 yards deep in the backfield, like just completely losing any sort of semblance of a blocking unit on the interior on those plays. And I'm like, well, I understand. I mean, Aaron Rodgers almost got tackled on the handoff on that play. I guess they have to throw the football. Everything is hard for this offense right now. Everything is difficult. And Aaron Rodgers just looks so exasperated. Like, first off, he's trying to make some miracle throws, which he tried one to Allen Lazard in the end zone, which was placed perfectly, but the window was like smaller than the size of my face, which can often appear large on the screen at times. It was about that big. To expect anybody to catch that would be out of their mind, and he almost did. And yet Rodgers is very angry at himself and maybe angry with the fact that it wasn't, producing a positive result. It's just, there's so much frustration right now. So that's how you end up with this final score, like where you end up with 17 points and a pick in the final minute, but they had a shot. Now, I have to say this, guys, 5 games in, I am sold on the Vikings defense. I was skeptical. I was like, well, maybe it's a matchup thing. What they did to the Niners was, maybe that was the aberration. I am sold now because of the way Brian Flores is. Count me the last guy on the train. I'll get on the caboose. I don't care.
Let's go.
Because they're good. They're well coached, like you said. Harrison Phillips is a monster in the inside. They have a great unit, and Gilmore getting that pick. I mean, because he was getting kind of touched up by Garrett Wilson earlier in the second half. Him getting that pick in that situation felt very vindicating, I think, for this entire Vikings team.
Right, but are we believing in the Vikings offense? This was a step back. Look, Aaron Jones is not as important as Justin Jefferson to this offense, and certainly the offensive line gives them a huge, big foundation to build off, and they were fine today, at least in their pass protection. But Darnold had a tough game. He got hit in the ribs very early, and maybe that was a factor, but just missing throws all over the place, not really seeing the field too well. I mean, I think Rodgers was just as good or better than Darnold in this game. Darnold goes 14 for 31. But you know what? He gets the ball with them only up 3 after that touchdown drive that I was saying, and he makes his best couple of throws of the game. at the end, one to Jefferson and then another to the tight end, Johnny Munt, and get some 3 points there. And so they feel better going into the bye. I think that he had a nice moment. He's not afraid to keep slinging. I'll give him that. Like, he kept firing it in there, and there were some bad decisions and bad throws, and he kept going, and it paid off in the end that he had a couple good throws.
Yeah, both one wide receivers got a lot of volume today. A lot of those balls that Sam Darnold threw Justin Jefferson's way probably could have gone somewhere else in the progression. I can't be too mad at Sam for that, but he'll tell you it was just a standard Sam Darnold game before this season.
Right.
That's how I felt too.
like this is we'd seen this before.
Yeah.
The rest of the team picked him up there, and of course Aaron Jones is a huge factor. But and I don't really know how much of the game plan went to Aaron Jones and how much just goes out of the window when Ty Chandler comes in. But Ty Chandler had a turnover as well. It was just it did impact things, but I don't really know that it was as much.
No, well, he has 22 targets to Jefferson and Addison for only 9 catches, which you're just not used to seeing, and some were just misses, and some were just bad decisions. Both of these guys, I mean, Garrett Wilson had 22 targets in this game. I thought Rodgers was making a point to force it to him early. On the very last drive of the game, Garrett Wilson, kind of sees the coverage, is stepping up on him on what looked like a hitch route, and then he decides to go deep. And Rodgers sees him, but he can't make the play and the throw. They would have won the game, or they would have taken the lead there if he hits Garrett Wilson. And those are the fine margins. Like, Rodgers just isn't creating very well on his own. He ends up going 3 for 17 on throws over 10 yards. So there were just some funky numbers here. And the Vikings go into their bye 5-0. The Jets chose not to take a bye. It's the way the NFL does it these days. If you go to London, the team can actually request to have the bye afterwards or not. Like, if they don't want it that early in the season, the NFL says, okay, you don't have to have it afterwards. And they will play the Bills in a really interesting Monday night game. But they are at 2-3. Long way to go. Let's actually listen to Rodgers after the game.
I'm definitely banged up. I got my foot caught on a pile there. But just seems to be a low ankle sprain. Again, they were trying to get me in the tent, and we had a roughing the kicker, and I said, screw it, I'm going back out there.
Yeah, Willis Reed type performance from Aaron Rodgers, where he's honestly, because I had left the house to get in to do Game Day Live, and I saw Rodgers writhing around on the ground, and I'm thinking, oh, that's tough for the Jets. Rodgers goes down, and I get back in, and he's playing in the game.
He was crawling around like on the sideline after his knee got wrenched up, and you thought, my God, this could be like a long-term injury. And suddenly he's back out on the field, and they had like a long drive. So injuries were a factor here, but yeah, he diagnoses a low ankle sprain. Sauce Gardner, we should also mention, was evaluated for a head injury, but he did return to this game, right, at the very end.
Yeah, Sauce can't. There was a lot of time on the sideline, but I do believe he was
yes,
in.
He was back in. And just because I like patting ourselves on the back, let's just mention, if you listen to the previous show, what game we took as a survivor pick. And there were some landmines out there. You could have gone 49ers today. That would have been trouble. We didn't do that.
No.
We went with the Vikings, and they came through it. Good job by me, Patrick, and Steve Weiss. That was the Sunday Drive presented by the all-new hybrid Toyota Camry. Whatever your vibe, it's a Camry vibe. Learn more at toyota.com/Camry. Let's head to Washington. Nick, one of these weeks we should just take you off Browns duty, but this was not that week.
2nd and 7 at the 41-yard line. 2 wide receivers to the right and 3 to the left. McCaffrey and Ertz next to each other inside the numbers. McCaffrey chip blocks. Jaden loads one up towards the army run. He's got him! Touchdown! Touchdown, Washington!
That was Bram Weinstein from WBIG. Jaden Daniels goes deep to De'Ami Brown, part of a 34-13 victory. The Washington Commanders are 4-1. They've won their last 2 games by a combined score of, let me do the math here, 76-23. Jaden Daniels went for 82 on the ground, another, a couple big throws through the air, a 66-yarder, a 33-yarder, and a 41-yarder. Like, is this one of the best teams in football, Nick Shook?
Whoa. Well, the big concern with them wasn't quarterback because Jaden Daniels proved himself rather quickly, starting with that Monday night win over Cincinnati. It was the defense. Can the defense get a stop? Well, in the last 2 weeks, the defense has allowed a combined 27 points while outscoring them, like you just said. So Dan Quinn's fingerprints kind of all over this. They had 7 sacks today against the Browns offensive line that is very quickly becoming notorious for being a sieve. And you can sack Deshaun Watson as much as you want against them, as long as you send the house on third down, as every defense has done to the Browns this year. But this defense is coming together, and especially in the front seven. The back end still leaves me a little bit concerned, but the front seven is really playing well. They were dominant on both sides of the ball today. Just a complete team win. And, it's funny because you look at Jaden Daniels' stat line. It's 14 of 25 for 238, a touchdown and a pick. Probably his roughest game in the NFL so far, maybe save for week 1 or 2.
Week one was, week one, I would say.
Yeah,
but yes.
week 1. Because, he still produced, but they were trailing that whole game, right? He still was awesome. It's just that the Browns had a nice little edge on him early in the game, and their offense is so bad that it didn't matter. And he found his groove. That touchdown pass to De'Ami Brown was the straw that broke the camel's back, the crack in the dam that burst, whatever it is. That's what it was. And it just was a cruise fest from there for the Commanders, who look fantastic offensively.
Yeah, let's listen to our friend Bram Weinstein again for a candidate I'll throw out there from Jaden Daniels for throw of the year. I don't know. This one caught our eye.
Toady candidate.
Snap to Daniels. Big pressure coming up the middle. He tries to get away from Delphin and does. Moves to his right. Looking downfield. Throwing for McLaurin behind the defender. 15. Stumbles down to the 2. Jaden Daniels has done it again.
The magic of Jaden Daniels was on display.
London Fletcher there on the call along with Mr. Weinstein. I mean, sprinting, right, throwing that ball. It's just how it comes down so pretty, Patrick.
And it's a great throw. It will be on the Toady reel. It's not quite touching Richardson's.
No. And I wish McLaurin finished it with a touchdown. That was bad luck. He just got caught from behind by the ankle.
But I mean, it's an incredible throw. The guy also for the fourth week in a row. I'm looking over. Cliff called an incredible football game. Austin Eckler had at one point in the fourth quarter, Austin Eckler had 16 yards per touch, like per catch and per carry. Like everything was working. Of course, he's 7.5 yards a carry. And so it's tough to figure out like how much is the rookie being phenomenal and not being a lot of tape on him, and Cliff just putting together a great game plan. But I mean, the win for the Browns today is somehow getting Jaden Daniels to have 11 incompletions.
Right.
Yeah. like that. That's the win for the Browns.
I saw, Jaden Daniels against unblocked pressure in the first half. There was 4 unblocked pressures. He went 2 for 2 for 78 yards. One of them was, that long throw. And then he ran for 36 yards. So even the perfect defense is not getting him down. He is just a force of nature. I would say the story of the NFL season right now is Jaden Daniels. This is so much different than 2012 because of the ownership.
Yes.
And 2012 people look back on now as like a moment in time of like, oh yeah, that couldn't have lasted. You wouldn't have known that at the time. That was equally magical in terms of the level of play that RG3 was at. He was fantastic, like his level. But the fact that Snyder was there, it was always something hanging over this organization. It changed things in a way that this feels like a totally fresh, different type of start. That is not the case. It's almost the opposite in vibes when we're talking Cleveland. Nick, let's listen to Kevin Stefanski after the game, asked if he's going to bench Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, we're not changing quarterbacks. We need to play better. I need to coach better. And that's really what it is.
Yeah, when you start just saying like everyone around him needs to play better, that's not a good sign. Give me your Deshaun Watson recap from today. Ends up throwing the ball 28 times for 125 yards, and a lot of that was in garbage time.
Well, point number 2 in my what we learned is it's time to bench Deshaun Watson. Okay. And I don't say that with any sort of, Cleveland background in me. It is just obvious. This is a guy who is holding your offense back. Yes, they don't protect well. Yes, they don't run the ball except for maybe a third of their plays, and they don't do it well until late in the game when it doesn't matter. But this guy is not playing quarterback at an NFL level anymore. He's just not. He's been under pressure so much in the first 4 or 5 games of the season that as soon as he senses pressure, he's pulling his eyes down. There are guys open. He's looking at the rush almost immediately. He held the ball for an average of 3.27 seconds today. He's not making quick decisions. He lacks the speed and mobility to get out of the pocket and extend plays with his legs or pick up positive gains for first downs. It seems like he doesn't even want to run unless he absolutely has to. Ball security is bad. The entire offense is being held back by him. They have money invested in receivers. They have money invested in David Njoku and tight end. None of that matters because even when they're open, he misses them by 3 yards. He did it early in the game against on a throw to Amari Cooper today. And Greg Olsen was like, "You're wide open in the NFL on that throw. Like, you got to make that throw." He's not good enough to play in the NFL as it stands right now. And if the Browns want to dig out of their 1-4 hole, they need to accept that fact. Kevin Stefanski needs to make a change and see what happens because you have no future with him right now. Plain and simple.
We already have the precedent once this season. Dave Canales on a Sunday after a bad loss by the Carolina Panthers comes out and says, "We're not making a change at quarterback." Lo and behold, 13 hours later, it's announced that there's a change at quarterback. I don't see. Jameis comes in this game. He throws one pass. It's complete.
He looks better in that one pass.
Like that one pass, I'd seen enough. I had seen enough before this year, but I feel like we have evidence as to right now what the best option for the Cleveland Browns is. It's not Deshaun Watson.
Well, Kevin Stefanski knows that. He knows the score. He knows who pushed for Deshaun Watson and who didn't. And to make it clear, I don't. But he knows like how much of that was his decision, how much went into this season and their plan for the backup and not deciding to bring Joe Flacco back, where Dorian Thompson-Robinson is at, because he's going to be an option at some point, if not right away. I don't think it's a guarantee that it would be Jameis Winston if they go to another quarterback. But he also knows that is a conversation I have to have with ownership, with the general manager, whether that's right or not. That's just a fact of life in the NFL, because I think when you go away from Deshaun Watson, you're never going back. It's the worst contract in the history of the NFL. It's the worst trade in the history of the NFL. And it's been the worst, just like to make a mistake that was so obvious before they even made it. I would have never expected the on-field product to be this bad. I thought it was a mistake because of everything else that Deshaun Watson was bringing, including a suspension. And now we're here, and I don't know what kind of career he's going to have moving forward. I don't know. Maybe they will let him play 6 more games. Like, everything is possible with this team. I doubt it, but man, it's just dark, man. It's pretty dark.
Yeah, I mean, we operate with the privilege of hindsight here, right? But at the same time, how many times are you going to slam your face against a brick wall before you decide to stop proceeding in the direction of the brick wall? Because the Browns are headed nowhere fast, and it all has to do with Deshaun Watson. And it's as simple as, if you need proof, just look at last year. Like, I know personnel around you has changed and their offensive line's banged up, but just look at last year. You got Joe Flacco off the couch and he played well. Like, make the change for your own.
How about
good.
the Jacoby Brissett year? You have all sorts of proof.
Exactly.
All of Kevin Stefanski's era there. Even Baker Mayfield, when he was going well, like, he has a history of quarterbacks that have done better. And they gave him and Andrew Berry, who deserves a lot of heat here, because he ultimately made the trade. Like, Watson, pretty late in this game, had 1.4 yards per pass. I mean, you just can't play football this way. They are only the 6th team since 2000 to have under 300 yards and under 20 points for their first 5 games of the season. The other teams, quarterbacks for those teams, there were a couple of Dolphins teams involved. It was actually post-surgery Dante Culpepper, which bums me out, and a little Joey Harrington. AJ Feely was involved. Jimmy Clausen's Panthers team. Yikes. Josh Rosen's Dolphins team. It's some of the worst teams ever. And I do want to say before we move on, I apologize to Jordan Rodrigue of The Athletic for complaining that she put Frankie Louvu on our preseason All-Pro team. Because, man, Frankie Louvu is balling out right now. 2 back-to-back dominant games. Frankie Louvu is getting it done. Let's end on a positive note and go to where Jordan was on Sunday. SoFi Stadium, Rams-Packers.
Here it is, ball game, 4th down and almost 5. Football to the 30-yard line of Green Bay. Stafford to the shotgun, 3 receivers left. Snap, Stafford looking, waiting, throws. It's broken up. Incomplete. Broken up on the play on a slant pattern. And it is Carrington Valentine who breaks it up. There is your dagger. Finally.
It was a finally. Like, you thought it was over, then it wasn't. You thought it was over, and then it wasn't. But finally, the Packers defense gets the stop. Wayne Larrivee on WRNW. Look, the Packers get it done 24-19, send the Rams into their bye at 1-4. The Packers get a much-needed win to get to 3-2 on a day, Patrick, where they didn't have Romeo Doubs because they suspended him after he missed practice on Thursday and Friday. Apparently, reportedly upset about the game plan. They had a game plan that was pretty heavy on Tucker Kraft and Jaden Reed. I like that. Dontavian Wicks, that did not work out for them. But they did get a win in kind of a game that had a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything, and ultimately, when you look back at this game, I understand Green Bay comes in, they're favored, they're healthier than Los Angeles. The Rams lost this game, Greg. There were 2 third-quarter turnovers that the Packers turned into scores. One of the Rams' touchdowns was an absolute gift from Jordan Love, Watoti, worst throw of the year campaign candidate, as he's falling out of the back. He could just take a safety. He's falling. He tries to get the ball to his tight end, ends up throwing a pick six. But the Packers on third down were 1 of 8. 1 of 8 of third down. They got outgained by the Rams. Those turnovers doomed the Rams in a performance where it seemed like, because Matthew Stafford has been carrying this hurt Rams team, there were a couple of throws from Matt Stafford today that I just haven't seen all season. Some misses. Good performance, but ultimately coming up short because of some crucial errors.
Yeah, he throws it 45 times to get to 260 yards. You know, they went into halftime with a lead, but then a fumble on their first drive of the second half. And they're a team that just has such a small margin for error. And that was a Kyren Williams fumble, who's been playing great overall. They spelled him a little more in this game. Finally, Blake Corum out of mothballs and looked good, getting 25 yards on 5 carries. But, like, they just can't afford plays like that. And then the Packers offense finally got going for a couple touchdowns. And I was thinking, okay, finally, like a normal Jordan Love game, because I just think he's been so up and down this year. But then they struggle in the fourth quarter. They punt a couple of times, including one on a long drive, and he had that interception. So I don't think this qualifies as a normal Jordan Love game, but you'd rather be figuring things out at 3-2, especially in a season where you didn't have your quarterback for 2 of those games. They survive in the Shanahan tree, off LaFleur beats McVay.
This is one of those games where they're going to look back and say, I'm really glad. Thank God we won that game, because we did not play our best. Like you said, Jordan Love has been up and down since he came back from that knee injury, and yet they pull out a win. He had one really nice throw late in this game that really killed me because it went right through Dontavian Wicks' hands, and then it forced them to punt, and the Rams get the ball back. But what really killed me the most was the misses that you talked about with Stafford. That 4th down throw that we just played. He's under pressure, and he misses his target probably about a yard and throws it basically out of his catch radius, and that's just how it all ends. And McVay's expression says it all. He's just staring up with his mouth agape like, I can't believe that just happened. I thought we had a good shot. Another game where a lot of things just feel difficult for them. I know they're hurt offensively. They're missing a bunch of linemen and everything else. They're missing their top 2 receivers. But a winnable game that you end up losing, and you're now 1-4. And like McVay, he alluded to after, like it hurts, and it should hurt, because this is a winnable game against a team that's going to end up with a winning record. And you're going to be looking up at them in the overall NFC standings if you can even get out of your own division. And you're just going to sit back and think, it was one of those ones that we should have had, and now we're 1-4, and we got to dig out of this hole. Yeah,
there's bad 1-4s, and then there's teams like the Rams who had that one game against the Cardinals, but otherwise has been just there in their 3 losses, all to good teams. And you wonder when he misses these throws, though. It's such a timing offense, and Jordan Whittington is clearly their number 1 receiver. I think he's a really good player, actually, and he should be owned in all fantasy leagues if he wasn't already. I think he's doing a lot of what they asked Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua to do, and I think Stafford clearly trusts him. 7 for 89. But he's your 1. Tutu Atwell is your 2, and Colby Parkinson gets 13 targets in this game. That's tough. Packers, weird situation. Yeah, Wicks had a bad game, and he had that drop. I mean, that's some of the problems with Jordan Love, but the Dobbs situation they have to figure out. I do like that they're unlocking Tucker Kraft, who had an outrageous 66-yard touchdown. That was a fantastic play. And then let's talk about the throw that Jordan Love had to Jaden Reed. I think this is a toady candidate throw of the year. Let's take a listen.
2nd and 10, Green Bay. The Packers 45. Love takes play action back to throw. Deep drop. Has time. Rainbows for Reed down the left side.
Oh, my God.
And Reed makes the catch inside the 5. A sensational over-the-shoulder catch. Down he goes at the 1-yard line of Los Angeles. What a throw. What a play. What a catch.
That is right near the top for me, Patrick. 61 yards, total air yards on that. To throw it from one hash to the other into double coverage, but it gets where it needs to go. Outstanding catch, too. Jaden Reed, is Jaden Reed like an all-pro? That's a totally separate point.
To your separate point, I do believe he is, because it might have been a better catch than it was a throw. A little bit of a journey. I'm frantically on Game Day Live trying to look through the roster to see who number 4 is for the Rams, but he takes this circuitous route, doesn't necessarily track the ball, actually winds up running past the ball.
Is that Akella Weatherspoon? I think it is. If you want to know who number 4 is.
Yeah, it is.
Did they sign him recently? And they actually had Tre'Davious White a healthy scratch, if you want to know how things are going at their cornerback position.
Well, he hasn't been good at all.
Well, yeah, it's been an adventure back there. It's a nice throw. I don't even know. I'm gonna have that Jaden Daniels throw probably a little bit better.
Okay, just put them both on the reel, Eric, and consider for our midweek meeting where we meet with all the higher ups in the NFL.
Yes,
Goodell shows up on the Zoom, but the face isn't on it, so I don't know if he's really there.
Right.
Let's maybe bring up the idea of the worst throw of the year, the W Toady. What is it? Because Jordan Love's there with 3 different Will Levis throws. All right, let's go to Seattle. We're not done with big plays yet. Let's go.
Myers, in his 10th year out of Marist, is set. Snap is good. Kick on its way, and it's blocked by the Giants. They got pressure up the middle, and they scoop it up. Running down the left side is Houston. He's to the 5, and he's in for the score and a touchdown. Bryce Ford Wheaton is the one that picked it up.
Bryce Ford Wheaton on a block by Isaiah Simmons. It was just a day for blocked field goal returns. It was a day for defensive touchdowns. More on that in a second. And it was a day for, Isaiah Simmons not playing a lot of defense these days, but gets it done at a point where it looked like the Giants might blow a 23-13 fourth quarter lead, but special teams saves them.
On a play where Brian Daboll's shouting out the special teams coordinator, and ultimately there's a lot of consternation in Seattle about the results of this play because the long snapper as well as the guard Laken Tomlinson got pushed in the back and held down.
Yes.
So Isaiah Simmons could jump over them. Apparently the rules clarification is that's okay. Keep an eye out for that in the league, because they weren't being held down, they weren't pulled down, they weren't blocked. They were just kind of made stationary. Give a clear lane for Isaiah Simmons on what ultimately I thought was about to be a Geno game-winning touchdown drive, Greg. But the Giants defense made the plays.
Yeah, so preceding that was a drop by Jackson Smith-Njigba. Am I remembering it correctly? I mean, that goes
Correct.
right off his hands on 3rd down, and so that ends up setting up that field goal. Geno also threw an incomplete deep to lock it right before that. And so they're in such great position with a ton of time, and then they're suddenly making that kick. Yeah, that was. I mean, Mike McDonald, the Seahawks coach, said after the game he thinks it was legal what the Giants did. Not many people have Dexter Lawrence's. I mean, that's the thing. How many people are that strong to actually pull that off? And how many people are that athletic, Isaiah Simmons, to jump over the top without making any contact with the line, which would make it a penalty? So I give it more to the individual execution. And the Seahawks didn't execute ultimately, because that drop by JSN absolutely killed them.
I have an answer for that.
Okay.
Another player who is as athletic enough to do that, Miles Garrett in Indianapolis last year did the same thing.
Yeah.
But it is rare.
That's who we're talking about.
Yeah, that's the class.
Yeah, the freaks. Yeah, the freaks of the NFL can do that. Yes, exactly. It's a thrilling play, but I thought it was fitting too, because the Giants defense really made life tough for Geno. I know he finished, 28 of 40 for 284 and a touchdown, but nothing was easy for them. And this is a Seahawks offense that we saw go toe-to-toe with the Lions a week earlier. They're a pretty explosive offense when everything's working right. And even things for DK Metcalf were tough. I mean, he had 4 catches for 55 yards, and he had a fumble. That was a turning point in the game as well. So, shout out to the Giants defense. We focus a lot on quarterbacks in this league, and Daniel Jones has steadily been better and better since his ugly start to the season, right? Small baby steps along the path toward being a competent quarterback. But this defense has really been sneaky good for them and has kept them competitive, especially in their last few games. I mean, it was dominant against the Browns. It made a big difference in this game today. Maybe not the next-gen stats. I think their pressure rate was, 35.3%. So that's not really going to jump off the screen for you that much.
Solid.
But nothing was easy for Geno. Yeah, I mean, it's solid, but it's not like, whoa, they're in the 40s. Nothing was easy for Geno, though, because of this Giants defense. That front 4 and really that front 7 has made life tough for a lot of offenses so far.
Well, yeah, Lawrence gets 3 sacks in the game, 4 quarterback hits, and then that play at the end. He is an all-pro.
Yes.
Yes.
And Brian Burns he's had a couple plays this year. I know it hasn't been every week, but in their 2 wins, he has made game-changing plays that led to that win. So the Seahawks go for it on a 4th and 1 from their own 35 in the 4th quarter, and Burns comes like a bat out of hell, untouched, but just reads the play, explodes, and prevents Geno Smith from doing anything. Did he get the sack, or did he just have the pressure on that play? I can't even remember. Either way, it sets up a short field goal drive for the Giants to go up 2 scores. I thought that was going to be the end of it, but this being the NFL in 2024, that was not the end of it.
And also, the Giants offense, in terms of a breakout game, Tyrone Tracy had 12 carries coming into this game. Ultimately, goes 18 carries for 129 yards. The Giants sustained offense because with the frustrated the DK Metcalf turnover, the turnover on downs. Geno and company just wanted shots to get back out there, but in several opportunities, they just couldn't get back out there because the Giants were staying on the field. I thought, I know Shook, we talk about quarterbacks a lot, and in terms of QB wins, this is the best dimes game that I've seen in a while.
Interesting.
But even considering that, there was a 3rd and 4 opportunity in the 4th quarter, get a first down, get out of there, and get the win, and the Seahawks defense comes up with a pass breakup. There's questions on whether.
Oh, that was a PI, I thought, on the Seahawks defender. Yeah.
So
they got lucky a little too in terms of the.
But you don't want to waste the good dimes games. They got a good dime game with no Malik Neighbors and got to win.
Yeah, exactly. That's the key point. No Malik Neighbors. Wan'Dale Robinson, makes a touchdown grab, and Darius Slayton has a really nice game, 8 for 122 and a touchdown. And it was like in this one stretch where he just caught a deep ball, gets flagged for taunting after signaling a first down, then makes another catch. Like suddenly they just exploded out of nowhere. And I'm like, oh my God, the Giants offense isn't just like competent. They have a little bit of life here. I don't know if they can sustain it over 4 quarters, but when paired with the defense, they're a tough out. Now they're only 2-3 because of that rough start that they had, but I kind of like the way they're trending, not team of the year type stuff, but like sleeper,
Well, I said
for them.
I think on the preview show it was damning with faint praise, but they were like the 2nd best 1-3 team in the league.
Yeah.
To the Bengals. I was like, they're actually playing like close to like the 20th best team. And so it makes sense to me that they are 2-3. I'm noticing this is a trend around the NFL, especially the NFC. Like everyone's just trending towards the middle. Forget that there's every team has won a game, spoiler alert, in the NFL. Almost every team in the NFL in the NFC has won 2 games. Like everyone is at 2-3 or 3-2 for the most part. The Rams and a team we haven't talked about yet, the Panthers, are the only team that are at 1-4. And yeah, the Giants get it done on a day where they're missing Devin Singletary as well. I think if you don't pressure Daniel Jones, he's going to be fine. And we've talked about fraud watch occasionally for some teams.
We have.
I don't think the Seahawks are remotely there because their defense is going to travel. But the Seahawks defensive ratings after the first 3 weeks look a little fraudulent because they got some healthy players back today. They got Leonard Williams back. They got Nwosu back. They got their linebacker Jerome Baker back. And it was still pretty rough to give up 420 yards to the Giants, 24 first downs, and get run on by Tyrone Tracy, 129 yards. That is not a good performance by the Seahawks. So on a day that starts for the Seahawks with a 102-yard fumble return, touchdown return by Rayshon Jenkins, their safety, you get a free 7 points that you don't expect to get there. They still end up losing to the Giants. They are 3-2, and like I mentioned, they're going to be playing on Thursday night. We will take one more break here. We're going to get to the teams. that are headed overseas this week. Like myself, looking forward to this game in London, but first got a couple games to talk about stateside.
Two tight ends set. I formation this time on 2nd and 5. Bigsby, the running back. They toss it to the left to Tank. He cuts it back to the middle of the field. That's good running. Tank Bigsby into the open field. 45, 40, 35, 30, 20, 15, 10, 5. Touchdown. Tank Bigsby has exploded for another score. 65 yards. How good is that? And the Jags extend the lead.
Oh, it is good to hear Frank Frangi's voice again. First time all year. WJXL. Yeah, Tank Bigsby with his second impressive touchdown run of the year. I mean, his 19-yard run in the third quarter was an absolute thing of beauty as well. He has come to play this year, 101 yards, and yet it came down to a whole lot of defensive collapse in the fourth quarter, and Trevor Lawrence being asked to step up and potentially save his coach's job. Like, we'll never know, but the walls were caving in on this Jaguars team. They hadn't won a game all year. They're up 34-20 after that run. There's only 5 minutes left in the game, and somehow the Colts have two separate touchdown drives that go for 70 yards or more and 45 seconds or less. It was going to be one of the worst collapses that you've ever seen, and there was some whispers that if they don't win this game, who knows if Peterson even makes the trip to London. So Trevor Lawrence gets the ball, and this is going to get a little forgotten in this game. He throws a 9-yard throw to Dearness Johnson. A really nice catch by Luke Farrell, 11 yards. And then who's he trusted more over the years than Christian Kirk, 14 yards to him. He sets up a Cam Little 49-yard field goal. They get out of there with a 37-34 win. And it was really nice, Shook, to just see them execute offensively at the end of this game, because they needed every last yard, every last point, because their defense wasn't doing anything by the end. 24 fourth quarter points for the Colts, but the Jaguars escape with their first victory of the year.
Yeah, and on a day where I thought the best thing for the Jaguars would be their throwback uniforms, turns out they put up 37 points and almost 500 yards of offense, and Trevor Lawrence kind of figures it out for the first time all year. 28-34, 371, 2 touchdowns and a pick. That's the Trevor Lawrence that the Jaguars need, especially if their defense can't stop a nosebleed, as we learned in the fourth quarter. And Tank Bigsby, 13 for 101 and 2 touchdowns. That is the offensive production we've been waiting to see from the Jaguars, that we thought we might see, that we just hadn't come close to seeing until Sunday. What a day. Not going to say it's going to save it's going to save Doug Peterson's job in the long run, because it's still not a great football team, but what a day.
Who knows?
For a franchise and a fan base that desperately needed this.
You just stay in the picture. You just never know. It's like the Saints this year. Just stay in the picture. You never know if you have a good season. We don't even know if they will. Doug Marrone, when he won a game as an interim head coach with the Jaguars, I always remember this. That one game got him the full-time job, got him a whole other contract in like years of just stay in the picture, because you don't know. They play the Bears next week. They'll be underdogs in that game, but the Bears aren't an unbeatable team. Then you got the Patriots after that. You stay in London. London saved their season last year. It turned it around. So you just never know. And you can tell Doug Peterson absolutely felt it. This was him talking after the game about a possible weight off Trevor Lawrence's shoulders.
Well, I think there's a weight off everybody's shoulders.
Fair. Yeah, fair.
Right?
Yeah.
Not just him. There's a weight off of my shoulders, too. Now you guys can get off my tail for at least a week.
Everyone's laughing there, but I mean, I think Doug Peterson might have come into this game feeling like he needed to win this game.
And this was the best offensive performance, not even close, the best offensive performance that the Jags have had, other than a weird Trev decision, firing a ball into triple coverage to Brian Thomas Jr. A solid game as he celebrated his 25th birthday. And really, it starts to feel like, well, we're getting more Tank Bigsby in here. I know Travis Etienne was dealing with a shoulder injury in this game, but Tank Bigsby played great. They run.
It's been awesome this year.
And it's one of those things where you also got a spectacular performance, because I know the Colts made play after play after play, but number 1 overall pick Trayvon Walker had a strip sack of Joe Flacco. He had the game-sealing sack of Joe Flacco as well. So the Jags defense made plays as well. Josh Hines-Allen was picked up and got the fumble recovery that got them 3 points. That
he was getting pressure all day. The funny thing is, you look at Flacco's line, 33 for 44 for 359 and 3 touchdowns, and they were decent. Like for half this game, I was like, oh, the old, okay, the magic's gone. Like Flacco's just like missing some open throws. He's looking pretty old when he's under pressure, and yet he got it all together at the end. Now I can almost hear the Colts fans yelling at the podcast. Do people yell at podcasts? I don't know.
I do.
Yes.
They're like, can you mention the injuries? And yeah, it is fair to note the following Colts were not involved in this game. Anthony Richardson, although at this point, I think Joe Flacco runs a cleaner offense overall. I think that's fair to say. Like Josh Downs ends up 9 for 69 in this game. You had those bombs to Pierce. Like I don't know if that's a huge downgrade, but Jonathan Taylor, that's a huge, huge downgrade to Trey Sermon. Kwity Paye is out. Kenny Moore is out. Their best cornerback. Ebukam has been out all year. Tyquan Lewis is now on injured reserve. DeForest Buckner is on injured reserve. Juju Brents also out. Their starting corner, and then they lost Will Fries, who was filling in at tackle to what looked like a very devastating leg injury that he had to be carted off. And so, I know a lot of teams have injuries. That's next level injuries, and their offense is making it happen despite it. Because hell, Joe Flacco just throwing it down there because it. Pierce is down there somewhere. Let's listen in.
Joe Flacco in the shotgun formation. Play action. Good protection. Lost it downfield for Alec Pierce. He's got it. 30. He's at the 20. Down the far side like 10.
Touchdown.
5. Touchdown. I-N-D-Y. Alec Pierce with fireworks in the fourth quarter. He strikes again. It's 34-33. And the Colts are 1 point away from tying the game.
I just wanted to hear that crazy moment in the game at WFNI. Matt Taylor. Yeah, that was the moment I was just like, anything is possible. I don't know what is happening in the Jaguars secondary. The first long completion to Pierce, which was initially called a touchdown, and then they ruled it wasn't, was just an absolute gorgeous dime. Flacco can still sling it.
And Pierce had a one-handed catch where he corrals the ball with one hand, actually knocks it away from a defender, and then catches it with his other hand. Those are the 3 targets. He had 3 targets, 3 catches, 134 yards. Like, can we get Alec Pierce some more targets?
That's true, but on the other hand, you could look at it like that's the best 3-target game maybe in NFL history. I can't imagine. Although Randy Moss had some wild
Randy
ones.
Moss. Yeah, Randy Moss.
Okay. This is there. Like, put this up with that Alec Pierce getting it done. The Colts are at 2-3. That feels about right for them for where they've been this season. The Texans open up, a 2-game lead in the division. And the Jaguars, who have been in 4 one-score games, finally get a victory before heading to London. Would the Bears do the same and really get us hyped up for the next game at the Hot Toddy?
Safeties are back deep. Snap to Caleb Williams. Good protection. Lines it up for DJ Moore to the end zone. Perfect throw. Perfect catch. Touchdown Bears. There you go. Deep strike and a 30-yard touchdown. 27-7 Bears. Second connection of the day with DJ Moore, and the Bears are pulling away from the Panthers.
DJ Moore goes 5 for 105, gets 2 touchdowns. And Caleb heard everyone talking like, okay, it was nice you got the win last week. Let's be a little more explosive on offense. Maybe let's win a game where you don't have to sweat it out. They did all of that. 36-10 over the Panthers. Caleb goes over 300 yards, very efficient on only 29 attempts. And suddenly this Bears team, Patrick, is kind of rounding into the team that they hoped they would be.
And I'll go old football guy cliche time because it looks so different now that the Chicago Bears can run the football. Mm-hmm. They look competent up front. Yeah. Caleb is making checks to run plays. They're positive plays. Caleb has time to do the Caleb Williams thing, the reason that we saw him drafted number 1 overall, where he's giving guys hezzies in the backfield, extending plays, getting first downs, kind of going on adventures back there, finding a receiver. 20 of 29, 304 yards, and 2 touchdowns. DJ Moore had a pair of touchdowns in the revenge game against his old team. They traded him away. Trade looking good for the Bears at this point because
that's an understatement.
The Bears. But honestly, right, because you see the control that Caleb Williams had against this game. I understand it's against an undermanned Panthers team that lost Jadeveon Clowney in this game. The pass rush really wasn't there when they did get there. Caleb was making them miss. But this was an all Bears game. On offense, the defense gave their traditional Bears-type performance, but they didn't need the heroics. Like Jaquan Brisker had an incredible hit where I was worried about both him and Tommy Trimble because their heads kind of ran into each other. Neither player was intending to make helmet-to-helmet contact, but it's just one of those situations, forced a fumble there, but they didn't need it.
It's awesome. I'm glad you shouted out that Brisker play. When people say, like, there's not physical football anymore in the NFL, like, I present to you Jaquan Brisker. There is kind of no one like Jaquan Brisker right now. He is very Bob Sanders to me. And that's cool to have different flavors. This Bears defense is showing what really good defense is going to do. And they haven't been a great defense, Shook. They've been a top 10 defense, but they haven't been like, hey, we're going to dominate. But when you play a team that's a little undermanned like the Panthers, they dominated.
Yeah, on paper, this felt like a game that was going to be a get-right game for the Bears on both sides of the ball, and really a comeback-to-earth game for Andy Dalton and the Panthers because of that Bears defense, because it's a defense that I think is just like quietly ascending and people aren't quite paying attention to him because they're focused too much on Caleb Williams in his first month and a half of his NFL career, but they've been solid, and this is the type of game where they prove, look, we are the superior unit against this offense, and we're going to prove it. We're going to make Andy Dalton, throw an interception and only throw for 136 yards. Like that on paper right there is like, okay, that's what I expected from them. But what I didn't expect, what I'm really excited to see from the Bears, is that DeAndre Swift was able to run the ball effectively, and it wasn't just him for 2 weeks in a row. Last week it was like a monumental moment when he burst through the line and scored a touchdown against the Ravens, right? It was because it just hadn't happened for them prior. Now they can kind of protect Caleb. Even when he's under pressure, today he went 5 for 8 for 98 yards, had a passer rating of 105.2. Like, once the running game opens up, it gives your offensive line a little bit of a breather because, look, we are allowed to actually run block because all offensive linemen want to run block. They don't want to pass block. And when they have to pass block, they'll be a little bit better at it because they're not spending the entire game doing it and picking up blitzes. So this is the front that they needed to play without Jadeveon Clowney to really get right. Caleb goes for over 300. And Bears fans have to be feeling – I know I have a friend who's a diehard Bears fan who was lighting my phone up afterward just being – send me the little fingernail paint emoji, like, oh, Bears win on a Sunday. Oh, that type of thing. They're getting some confidence right now.
Well, he also knows you're a Browns fan, so he's punching down. I don't think that's nice of him to do as a fan. A comeback to earth game for the Panthers, who I think kind of took a moral victory out of last week somewhat, and now Jalen Coker was their leading receiver on the game. It's just disappointing because you're getting Deontay Johnson and Xavier Legette involved so much more a week ago and with Dalton, and Dalton kind of had to come back to earth too in his revenge game. I mean, you got like a long touchdown run by Hubbard to start the scoring to make it 7-0, and you're thinking, oh, this is going to be frisky, but Dalton ends up with 136 yards and a touchdown on 28 attempts, and Bryce Young ends up coming in garbage time and having a drive that ends with a sack. At some point, they're going to ask the questions, when does Bryce Young come back? I don't think that time is now. But I did see an article on The Athletic actually asking that question, which is interesting to me.
Yeah, well, the answer is late in garbage time against
right. At some point, they mean like to start the game. I think that will happen. Their 1-4 feels darker than most. There are a few teams now that we can kind of look around the league, and we're going to talk about one of them coming up that at 1-4, it's already feeling like there's not much light at the end of the tunnel for the Panthers. That is not true about whoever was going to win the AFC West battle between the Broncos and the Raiders, because the winner of that game was going to have a winning record through 5 weeks of the season. Let's find out who it was.
Minshew under center. Minshew with a play fake, rolling to his left. Now floats one too high. It's going to be intercepted at the goal line. Down the west sideline, intercepted. This is past Surtain. Surtain's going to house call it. 25-20, 15-10, 5 touchdown.
KOA Dave Logan. There was a penalty on that play, so then there was confusion, but it ends up counting. Yes, Patrick Surtain has one of the defining plays of his career and absolutely a game-changing play. If you listened to that highlight and you didn't know who won, you might have thought, oh, it's Gardner Minshew's going to throw a touchdown to go up 17-3 in a game that there's been almost no offense. Surtain turns that around, pick 6, ties the game at 10, and the Broncos roll from there. They end up winning 34-18. Gardner Minshew gets benched in this game. He struggled, and I think he just had his feelings hurt because Patrick Claybon in the newsroom was just cackling that he thought this was the worst throw he's seen in the entire season.
It's tough to make it because it's a 14-point swing.
Yes.
Pat Surtain is on top of Brock Bowers, ready to make a tackle at the 1-yard line.
Yeah.
Like, that's what Pat Surtain is thinking. And Gardner Minshew airmails him. I understand there's a defender in his face, but in defense of Jordan Love, in defense of Will Levis, like, there's a player who has the potential of scoring a touchdown. Instead, the other team scores a touchdown. Like, that was the swing on this play. Like, he threw the ball the only spot on the planet where the absolute worst thing possible could happen. That's why it's the Watoni to me.
Put that on the worst throw of the year reel, and we're going to bring it up again at the meeting this week to see if that can officially become a thing. I guess you're right.
Hopefully Roger turns his camera.
Yeah, I hope so. It was a tough moment, and it's crazy how there was just like nothing for the Raiders after that. Christian Wilkins and Max Crosby were getting after it early in this game, and then Wilkins left with an injury. And after that, there just wasn't much going on defensively for the Raiders. Bo Nix, I thought, played well in the second half of this game. He was set up in positions to succeed. Javonte Williams ends up with 61 yards on the ground. He leads the team in receiving with 50. So that lets you know, like, it wasn't a lot of huge plays from the Broncos passing attack, but you do expect that. And one thing I will give Nick's credit for is that he is tough to sack, so he avoided some sacks, had one positive rushing play, but mostly just avoided mistakes, and they took over. Right now, like, they're playing just good enough on offense, and their defense is just a lot to deal with. They got Gardner Minshew benched, and Aiden O'Connell comes in and played worse, frankly, than Minshew did. I mean, Minshew moved the ball all day. He had the 2 interceptions, so I get why he was benched. But he's looked okay this year, and O'Connell did not look okay playing in place of Minshew. And we'll see who's the quarterback next week in Vegas. But does it really matter, Nick Shook, do you think?
No, it's bringing to life my biggest fear when they played that preseason game that was supposed to decide the quarterback competition, and they were both awful. And Antonio Pierce couldn't even get to the press conference and make a decision in that moment because he knew they were both awful. This is the realization of that, unfortunately, for the Raiders, who are coming off of a high of getting a low-scoring win last week, and then getting smoked by a division rival. This Broncos defense is for real, guys. Look, you gave up 26 points in your season opener, but since then you gave up 13 on a weird loss to the Steelers in which you had no offense. Since then, you've made trouble for Aaron Rodgers, Baker Mayfield, and now both Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, which is obviously a step down for the other two. But it just tells me that no matter where you are, road or home, this defense is playing well. It's going to be a problem for every team that plays against them this year. And it propelled them to victory. And it gave Bo Nix, who is about as predictable as the weather in Northeast Ohio this time of year, when it comes to him playing on a Sunday, it gave him, the padding he needed to be able to, just kind of dot the field underneath and, work within the system and come away with a win. So another good win for them. They wore gorgeous throwbacks. It was a throwback weekend in the NFL. Hey, man, there's not much I like more than a nice win and a good set of throwback uniforms.
Okay, so that pick 6, which was fantastic, was over 100 yards. It's the first time in NFL history that we've had a week with more than 2 100-yard returns. And not only did that happen, they happened about 5 minutes apart, and they happened by a defender wearing the number 2. So that's a lot that happened in a short amount of time. It was fun in the newsroom. This Broncos defense is making it that way. And you look at the score, it's 34 points. The Broncos only had 289 yards in this game. Like, how does that exactly happen? It happens with a 26-yard field goal drive in the first half, and then a 38-yard field goal drive in the first half. And so over their first, 7 possessions, all they had was 2 short field goal drives and 5 punts. And to your point about the defense, Nick, that's a defense letting their offense eventually catch up to the game. And even then, they were set up on short fields. The touchdown drives were only for 50, 39, and 58 yards, which is just outstanding field position, which came from the great defense, which came from the turnovers. Zach Allen had 6 quarterback pressures in this game. another sack. He is an I keep saying all-pro. All-pro is tough, but he's in the mix for all-pro, and he's certainly had a Pro Bowl season. And then Riley Moss, who teams want to pick on because he's the other one opposite Surtain, is playing better every week and had an awesome interception in this game. A really athletic play there. And the Broncos are frisky at 3-2. You know who else is frisky?
Who's that?
Bo Nix. I mean, what did you think of that Bo Nix, Sean Payton back and forth barking at each other on the sidelines?
I think, and honestly, because Bo Nix was joking after the game, like, what was said? He said, "I love you."
Wow.
I think folks are kind of poo-pooing this. I think that's the right reaction. Like, all sorts of things happen. There's helmet communication. There's discernment. There's agitation because Bo has Troy Franklin open for a touchdown, and they don't connect in the end zone there. I think sometimes things just get hot. Somebody says something cross.
I just like the body language because he was barking at Sean Payton. And if I was choosing like which player which person like kind of bowed down a little more, like Bo Nix was like in it. And Sean Payton was kind of like, whoa, man, this guy is serious. Let's listen to Sean Payton after the game.
It's part of the deal. Listen, last year all of a sudden it's just, there's still a little bit of Ferris Bueller in this player that we got to get rid of. All right, talking about Bo, and I love him to death. And so sometimes it's my love language. All right.
Wait, I don't get the Ferris Bueller reference.
He's taking a day off. That's what Romeo Dobbs did. I don't think Bo Nix was.
We talk about Ferris Bueller. He was kind of a smart ass of a kid. Like, he's taking the day off of school and he's going around giving you all this life advice while he's gallivanting
I need more
around
context.
Chicago.
The follow-up from that reporter needed to be like, what do you mean, Ferris Bueller? I needed more context. Someone's got to explain it to me, but I frankly needed more. All right, let's go to the final game of the day. I know it's your game, Nick, but probably the less said about this game, the better.
12 seconds left. From Miami's 36. Short motion by Douglas from the left. The snap is back to Brissett. Dropping back, looking to throw.
Okay.
He steps to his right. He sets up. He fires down the middle for Henry. Makes the catch at the 10. They've got to hurry to the line. There's only 3 seconds and 2 seconds left. And they're not going to have enough time to get another snap off. That's the game. Miami will win it by the 15-10 final.
This is the worst loss since Tom Brady left the Patriots.
Oh, whoa.
Scott Zolak, that's the first time I heard it. I just said, get me Zolak on this, and I figured it'd be great, and it was even greater than I imagined. That was Bob Sochi on WBZ with Scott Zolak. 15-10, the Dolphins win the game. And look, I don't want to shortchange a Dolphins victory because Dolphins fans will be like, you gave us no time, you're just miserable that the Patriots lost. And no, I didn't even watch this game. You explain to me what can be taken from it from a positive Miami angle. Shook. I mean it for real. For real.
I mean, I wanted to talk about Zolak and his recency bias
Okay,
because there have been worse
then.
losses than this.
Yeah, okay,
there have
that's a fair
definitely been
point.
worse losses than this since Tom Brady left. Let's keep it real here, Zolak. But no, the Dolphins, pretty much everything that could go wrong went wrong for them in this game. They had a long snapper snap a grounder to their kicking unit to try to kick a field goal. That didn't work. They had a missed kick as well, a pretty short kick that went off the upright. It seemed like everything they tried to do just didn't work well. But eventually, they started to figure it out in the second half. They put together a couple field goal drives, and by the fourth quarter, when the game was within 5 points, actually it was within 1 point, 10-9, riveting moment, they decide, you know what, we're actually going to pound the run, and it's going to work because most of the day was dominated by the Patriots' ground attack. No, it's Jalen Wright for a gain plus 10. Raheem Mostert for a gain of 18. Another Jalen Wright carry. And then they get down by the goal line, and who finishes it off? None other than the fullback, Alec Ingold, because fullbacks are people too. And he got in the end zone to give them the lead. Tyler Huntley up and down, better than he was the week prior. Still missed some throws, still looked a little haphazard in the pocket, but I mean, they won the game in a game that they should win because the Patriots are not a good football team. I hate to say it. Look, Jacoby Brissett is tough as nails, and God, he deserves a medal after the end of the season for however long he plays because he gets clobbered every week, and he got crushed plenty in this game, but he keeps standing in there and throwing the ball. He also finished with 160 yards, and most of those yards came in the fourth quarter. He actually threw a touchdown pass that was ruled incomplete because Jalen Polk didn't get the other foot in bounds in the back of the end zone. That would have given them Patriots the win.
But that was a bad throw, wasn't it? I mean,
it was a little high. He was wide open, and it was a little high.
If he puts that on Polk, they take the lead there with
And he doesn't
very
have to
little
jump. Yeah.
very little time remaining. I bet Zolak had a great reaction to that one. Let's actually listen to more Zolak. I don't know what this is, but Eric just says we've got more Zolak, so this should be fun.
Probably keeps going.
This is the worst loss since Tom Brady left the Patriots. And there have been some bad ones. This team, inexcusable losing this team at home, 1 o'clock on a Sunday. You get a quarterback off the street to come in here and beat you. You couldn't stop the run. Your penalties, your slop, and you can't move the ball. You're never going to win games scoring 10 points. And until you're ready to make decisions to change it, it's going to be what it is. And maybe you start looking at tackles at the top of the draft next year.
Yeah, what's he want him to do? Like if there were starter tackles that were available right now, the Patriots, I guess, or the Browns would have gone and gotten them. There's nobody there.
Right. And the guys that are there got hurt. I think you could question the play calling in this game. 34 passes for the Patriots, averaging 4.7 yards per pass, and I'm sure even lower if you per passing play if you count the sacks. Whereas they ran the ball 19 times, 7.9 yards per run. This is a rare game, and yes, you mentioned the Dolphins ran the ball well. That's what Mike McDaniel made his money off. That's how he got the head coaching job, was from the running game, and they run for 191 in this game. So that Patriots defense really hasn't been too stout, and that's what they were known for forever. But eventually they broke down after a whole lot of punts. And hey, you never know. Dolphins stay alive at 2-3, Patriots at 1-4. Anything more from you, Shook, on this one?
The Patriots' offensive line is terrible, but we've talked about that already. I mean, the interior, oh my God, they just get blown up. Zach Sealer had a field day against this interior. It was bad.
Zach Sealer is a great ball player. And yes, the pressure percentage for the Dolphins on this day, 51%. I didn't know what it was going to be before I started that sentence, but I just knew they would come through it for me at a hugely high rate, 51%, which is just...
Yeah, Brissett, he's been pressured at a rate of 50% or higher in 3 games this year. That is losing football, Scott, and you're not going to fix that overnight.
No, but I do think you should play Drake May. Just why not?
So he can get crushed too?
I think he'd get rid of the ball quicker, and maybe, and yeah, I mean, play football. I think playing football is a good way to get better at playing football.
Yeah, I think it's the only way to get better at playing football. I don't know.
It is.
I got worse at playing football watching this game. I think Drake May actually getting involved in the actual game is probably going to be good for his development because you can actually develop.
And I think it's coming soon. Wouldn't surprise me if it is this week. That's it for Patrick's contribution to the show. And what a contribution it was. Outstanding stuff. Nick Shook and I will wrap up and go to Sunday night. Cowboys, Steelers. It was a late one.
For the ball game, 4th and goal. Prescott in the gun, snap is back. He has some time. He throws it in the end zone. It's a touchdown to Jalen Tolbert on the left side of the end zone, crossing in front of Deshaun Elliott with 20 seconds to play. Goodness gracious me.
Yeah, that's Brad Sham on KRLD. One of the longest days in professional football history ends just before 1 a.m. on the East Coast. Cowboys get the win, 20-17. Dak Prescott on 4th down gets enough time, feels a little pressure from the right, and just shakes over to the left. Good job by him. Finds Jalen Tolbert, who had a nice night on a play. Nick Shook that decided who was going to win and who was going to lose. And it's one of the things I love about football because based on the result of that single play, you were going to get an entire week's worth of positivity in Dallas and a week's worth of negativity in Pittsburgh. And look, I think the Cowboys earned this one. 2 big-time drives at the end of this game. They ultimately almost doubled up the Steelers in terms of total yardage. And Dak Prescott gets a win in a night that you just thought was going to go the Steelers' way because they won so many games like this, but they didn't this time. Cowboys just a little bit better.
Yeah, I felt like they might have played Renegade a little too early for the 4th quarter in Pittsburgh, but that's neither here nor there.
Although they got an interception on the drive that follows it, so it seems like it worked.
Right. Yeah. Voodoo Magic, that song. This was a night that was building toward being one of those doomsday Mondays in Dallas if they had not completed that pass on 4th and goal. Primarily because they got within a half a yard of the end zone and nearly fumbled possession away on 1st down. And then by the time they get to 4th down, you look back at earlier in the game when the Cowboys had 3 trips to the red zone and only one of them produced points. Fumble, field goal, interception, 3 in a row, all ended inside the Steelers' 20-yard line. They only got 3 points out of it. They also had a blocked field goal. There were a lot of missed opportunities on the field, which explains why they nearly doubled them up in yards, and yet they needed a touchdown in the final seconds to win the game. But overall, you cannot overlook the fact that Dak Prescott dug deep and led 2 huge drives in that 4th quarter. And, tip of the cap, Rico Dowdle, man, running way harder than his measurables would suggest. A run game finally getting going for the Cowboys, which they lacked in the first month of the season. So a great win, overcoming some adversity on the road, a 90-minute delay, which can really wreck you, just having to wait that extra time after getting all warmed up and everything else. So they battled back and did a great job.
Yeah, it was ugly. The first half was 6-3 at halftime, and the field was still a little sloppy after the rain and the lightning that, yes, delayed this game for quite a bit, and made it, I believe, about a 15-and-a-half-hour day of football. If you woke up like me on the West Coast, made a little coffee, went out in the garage, the game started around 6:30 a.m. and it finishes a little before 10 p.m. So we almost got 16 hours of football, and you know what? That was a good amount for me. I liked it. When this game was slow, I was like, okay, let's move it along. But that was a fun 4th quarter. The Cowboys, like I said, go 16 plays, 95 yards. That ends at the beginning of the 4th quarter. That's maybe their best touchdown drive of the entire season. They get a stop. You think everything is going to be great. And then it's the interception that I mentioned. Steelers have probably Justin Fields' best drive of the night. I think Fields has played outstanding all year. Tonight was maybe not his best night overall. They didn't really get the running game going. They tried him on design runs early, but on that drive, he made good decisions, was accurate with the ball, gets it in for them to take the lead. It's a 4-point lead, and that helps the Cowboys be more aggressive, and they timed it out perfectly. That was like a 5-minute drive that ends with 20 seconds left, and yes, you would have liked it to be a little easier when they get along the goal line. Landon Roberts did his best Troy Polamalu impression, flies over the line of scrimmage, gets his helmet right on Rico Dowdle when he's carrying the ball, trying to score the touchdown. And again, if that ball just bounces differently on the turf, the Steelers recover, and it's one of the greatest defensive plays of the entire season. Steelers win, but this time Dak Prescott, Johnny on the spot, is the one that recovers the ball and ends up throwing the game winner to Tolbert, who had a nice night, 7 for 87, was a bit of a theme. Other guys stepping up. Kevontae Turpin was more active, 4 for 50 in this game. You mentioned Dowdle. Ferguson had 70 yards. So they spread it around. They had more of a power rushing attack. Shook. They said they were going to give up on a little bit of that outside zone. Rico Dowdle said it's taken a while for us to find our identity. This worked out better for them and something for the Cowboys to build off.
Yeah, and it was much needed balance because, look, Dak threw for 352, but he also threw for 2 interceptions to go along with his 2 touchdowns. Any offense is going to be better when you're balanced, when you have a threat on the ground and in the passing game, and that was massive for them in those 2 4th-quarter drives, was being able to run the ball with authority for positive gains consistently and not getting stonewalled by the Steelers defense that we know can be very good. And it was very good in the first half. They shut down one of the Cowboys' trips to the red zone with a strip sack of Dak Prescott, stopped their momentum in their tracks, but the Cowboys were able to figure it out. And, you talked about Ferguson. He made a huge catch on 3rd down, kind of pivoting outside, catching the ball, and then getting away from a defender for a massive first down to keep that drive alive, because there were multiple instances in that last drive where the Cowboys were this close to stalling out, this close to being forced into uncomfortable 4th down situations, and it wasn't until they had that 4th and goal that they actually had to deliver. And again, a night where other guys that you typically don't mention made the contributions. Tolbert on the Dallas side. Pittsburgh, George Pickens was pretty quiet all night, and yet they still managed to put 17 points on the board and hold this lead until the final minute. So every time, every game we play is not always going to feature the stars, even if the stars are the ones that attract the eyeballs. Sometimes it's about the lesser-known guys, and that was definitely a theme tonight.
Yeah, Pickens finally made a big play on that final touchdown drive, but otherwise was silent. They were running all these heavy personnel packages with, 2, sometimes 3 tight ends, and he was not on the field for those plays. And so he actually had less routes run than Van Jefferson in this game. And Najee Harris is their leading receiver with 35 yards. They're going to need to be better on offense. I think Fields has actually covered up a lot of offensive line and schematic deficiencies for this team, and it ended up showing up in this game when Fields maybe wasn't quite as sharp. He throws for 131 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think the key of the second half actually was Nick Herbig getting hurt, because he led this game in pressures, actually. He had more pressures than TJ Watt. You mentioned that strip sack. That was really a combined effort between him and TJ Watt. And once Herbig was out of the game, they're sending extra attention to Watt, who wasn't quite as active, maybe wore down a little at the end of that game, and weren't quite as deep on the defensive line. So the Cowboys get done. Huge game in terms of managing the season. Their schedule coming up is tough. They were about to be 2-3 going against Detroit next week. That would have been rough to deal with. Like, there was a couple potential losses. This really just stems the tide, calms things down. 3-2 is fine in this NFC, where, like I said, almost everyone has 2 wins or 3 wins. They've got 3. And yeah, the Steelers fall back. That lead in the AFC North was gone quickly. They are now tied with the Ravens at 3-2. And what a day, Shooky.
I gotta say, a shout out to Mike McCarthy, a guy who is known, infamous for screwing up clock management situations at the end of games. Played it perfectly tonight. Good for you, Mike. Back home, in case you didn't know, by the broadcast, which reminded you about 50 times, he's from Pittsburgh, and he did a good job back at home.
It's the new Jerome Bettis is from Detroit. But you're absolutely right. And it was in a game, by the way, the Steelers could have desperately used those timeouts. Not only did they blow one right at the end when they were trying to get together before the goal line play, but they blew a couple what they didn't really need to earlier in the fourth quarter and had nothing left at the end to try to make a miracle drive. That will do it for our show. Appreciate everyone who made it this far in the show. We will be back on Monday night. This week is going to be a little bit different of a schedule. Nick's not with me Monday night, giving him the night off. Bridget Condon, who's going to be with me on Channel 5. If you're in the UK, watch me on Monday Night Football. Monday night, she's going to run upstairs. Then we're going to do Monday Night Football recap in the Chris Wessling podcast studio. Until then, you know football is back.